Now, recently the Nielsen ratings for the first episode of Season 3 of The Mandalorian were released, and for the record, it got 823 million minutes of watch time in the first week. And I've seen and heard a few different and interesting takes or reports on these numbers. Some negative, some positive, depending, of course, mainly on their point of view, on whether or not they've enjoyed or haven't enjoyed this current season, or that have maybe been influenced or skewed by their stance, good or bad, on Disney Star Wars overall, or perhaps by what their audience wants and expects them to say about Star Wars. And so, hoping and trusting that those who watch my videos appreciate my candor and my, at least, attempt to look at things from all sides, who don't just want to be pandered to, don't only want their own opinions confirmed, and instead truly want to discuss the good and the bad when it comes to Star Wars. Anyway, let's quickly break down these numbers and try to see what, if anything, we can extrapolate from them, and see if we can even reach any type of real conclusion here about the Season 3 premiere. And by these numbers, I mean I'm going to, for the most fair comparison possible, I feel, I'm going to stack the opening Season 3 numbers against the first episode of other Disney Plus Star Wars shows, including the second season of The Mandalorian, and only the second season. Nielsen wasn't doing this for Season 1. And just looking at the raw numbers and comparing them completely at face value, it might make you say, wow, this season is down nearly 20% from Season 2, and also fell well short of the Kenobi premiere. Heck, it didn't even outperform Andor by all that much, though it and everything else pretty much stomped the Book of Boba Fett. But of course, we can't just look at these numbers at face value. Keep in mind, this is simply the total number of minutes watched. It doesn't take into account runtime or how many episodes of the show already exist beyond the first one, and thus could and do to some degree add to the total watch time. For example, NCIS beat The Mandalorian this particular week, even though it's not like a new episode of the show debuted on streaming. It simply has 339 episodes in total, and apparently a ton of people who like to go back and watch them, or who are maybe watching them for the first time. And so what we have to do to begin to get a more accurate picture of how many people are actually watching is to divide these total minutes by the length of the premiere episode or episodes to get a rough estimate of the total number of viewers for the first episode or episodes. Keeping in mind Kenobi kicked off with a 2-episode premiere and Andor kicked off with 3 episodes, so that's going to have to be accounted for by combining the runtime of all episodes to get a view count. Which, mind you, then makes a few assumptions, not the least of which is that, in the case of Andor, for example, that someone watched all 3 episodes in that first week, which is certainly not the case for everyone. Same with Kenobi. It could be that someone watched the first episode of that show a couple days after it dropped, but still in that first week, and didn't catch the second episode till the following week. In other words, this is more or less the best way to come up with an approximate number of viewers, or people who watched the premiere episode, and there's even a few other factors to keep in mind, which I'll get to in a bit. But anyway, after doing the math here, it turns out that the first episode of Season 3 of The Mandalorian actually had a few million more viewers than Season 2, and more than double what Kenobi and Book of Boba Fett had, and, well, way more than what Andor got. However, another factor to keep in mind here is that, yeah, some of those minutes of watch time for The Mandalorian, for both the Season 2 and 3 premiere, it could be people watching previous episodes, just like how many people are watching NCIS reruns. And there's no way of knowing how many were rewatching those previous seasons to maybe remember what had happened or to get a type of refresher before the new season. And in theory, there were more episodes to go back and watch for the Season 3 premiere than there were for the Season 2 premiere, an entire season's worth, obviously, or double the total number of episodes. However, I don't really know how much of a factor, if any, that played there being more total episodes when you consider we're talking about 2 days to be able to watch all those episodes. I highly doubt pretty much anyone, other than maybe some real diehards out there, binged 2 seasons of The Mandalorian in 2 days. It's far more likely that if you were rewatching everything before the new season, you were watching 1 or 2 episodes a day or something like that, as you likely would have before Season 2 if you were doing the same thing. In other words, just because there were more episodes to watch doesn't mean there was more time to watch them. Though that said, Season 2 of The Mandalorian actually premiered on a Friday, which sure would give more time to watch first season episodes, and might slightly inflate viewership on that end. But more importantly, and potentially much more impactful for the total minutes watched, it had 2 less days for people to watch the new episode. But when you factor in that I'd wager a lot of people, maybe most people, probably either watch new episodes on the day they come out or on the weekend when they likely have more free time, I don't know just how much that 2-day head start helps Season 3. Certainly, yes, to some degree, but does it make up for roughly 4 million views? I mean, maybe, but my guess would be probably not. And so what seems to be the case when you now factor all this together is that the viewership of the Season 3 premiere was, at worst, roughly the same as for Season 2, and at best it saw maybe around a 10 to even 20% increase, which I'd say would be pretty damn good if it wasn't for the fact that the total number of subscriptions to Disney Plus has more than doubled in that time. Or doubled since the beginning of Season 2 of The Mandalorian, going from a little over 70 million subscribers to around 160 million. Which would almost make you think viewership of The Mandalorian would, well, maybe not double, but close to it, right? Or at least certainly be a lot higher considering so many more people now have the streaming service. However, Nielsen is not worldwide, it only measures within the United States, and a great many of those new subscribers are from outside the US. Keeping in mind Disney Plus did not have a worldwide launch, or even close to it. Many other countries had to wait a year or more for it to reach them. Though, sure, some of those millions, maybe many of them, are new US subscribers who, or so it seems, didn't necessarily sign up to watch The Mandalorian. Which, no, really shouldn't be that big of a surprise. I think most who planned to sign up primarily for, or even in large part for, Star Wars did that initially, of course. I think that perhaps a 10 to 20% growth for the show makes more sense than some sort of massive spike. And even if things are more on the low end of no gain to maybe losing a small percentage of viewership, that actually isn't bad when you consider the 3 major pieces of Star Wars content to come out since Season 2 of The Mandalorian, those being the Book of Boba Fett, Kenobi, and Andor, well, they all received, shall we say, some degree of mixed reviews from the core fandom. And so in conclusion, and by all means feel free to tell me what you take away from all this, but to me it seems like Star Wars, or at least The Mandalorian, isn't rapidly growing in the United States, but it certainly isn't dying either. It looks like it more or less just held, though it will be curious to keep tabs on the numbers over the next 8 weeks as the ratings for each new episode are released, and we get to see how this season does. I think that is where the real story will be told. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what, if anything, you think we can or should take away from these numbers. Is this a positive, is it a negative, or is it just too early to tell? Whatever you think, leave your comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.